Thank you so much for joining us today for the Pastor's Potluck Podcast. Here on the Pastor's Potluck, it's similar to a normal potluck where you might get something that you want and there may be something that you just want to pass up altogether. And that's okay. There's something here for everybody. Our goal here is to encourage you and maybe in the process entertain you. If you're ready, let's dig in. Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Pastor's Potluck Podcast. We have Pastor Cheryl on today. What's up? What's going on?
Hey.
For real.
I'm still a little tired, but I'm good. I'm here. I don't know. It's been like a whirlwind of a few weeks here because I had a week off and then VBS and then New York.
Yeah.
Now I'm here. So.
Like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And VBS week is like it's crazy for everybody on staff because we're all helping out and trying to fill in and do this and that and make sure everything. So people are coming and going and, just aside from like the weekly duties, like, main goal is focusing on VBS or whatnot. And, but also having a week off before that and then going on a week-long mission trip is, that's a hectic 3 weeks.
A little bit, yeah.
Big time. So, I heard that your ankles were sore.
Oh, my gosh. I didn't realize how bad they were. And I think because, on Sunday, the drive back, where I wasn't walking, I'm just sitting in the car, I think that made it worse. So, we got home in the middle of the night, and the next day I was like, I feel like I can't walk. And so our bed has the adjustable base, so I sat there with
Do you have one of those, those old people beds?
Oh yes. We splurged because, my husband's 10 years older than me. So, whatever. If you're going to do it, you might as well do it. Right.
Yeah.
And so, we do. And it was awesome. I just laid there with my feet up most of the day. I napped off and on because I was so tired. So tired. And the kids just would come up and climb in bed with me and, hang out on their tablets with me.
So it does the back reclining too the leg lifter up there?
Yes.
Does it change the firmness of it too?
No, we don't have that.
Okay.
That's a little bit more expensive than what we could afford at the time. Yeah. But we had the same mattress and stuff. So this is so not on topic. But we had the same mattress for since it was the mattress Anthony had before we got married.
Yeah.
And so last summer, we were having a lot of back issues, and I was like, we've got to get a new mattress.
We're at that point.
And so we finally went. I know. Well, we finally went. We went to one of those mattress warehouse places. There's one there in Mink Shoals, and went there, and it was just it wasn't much more. It was more, but it was we might as well get the adjustable base because it's it's got the vibration, it's got zero gravity, it's got whatever, I don't know. So we were just sure. Because she was people who have sleep apnea, it's really good because you can raise it up a little bit and it helps them breathe better. And I was like, fine, we'll do it because my husband and all his sleep issues. And I was like, anything to help him sleep better, we'll do it. So, I just relaxed on Monday and then the swelling went down a lot. Tuesday morning, I woke up and I was like, I have ankles again.
Yeah.
Now, my knees aren't quite as bad, but.
Do you have one of those app, the distance trackers to where you can see how many miles were y'all walking and stuff?
Okay. So here's the funny thing because, and you would love this. And Jess and I kept joking. We were we should take pictures of our steps side by side and send it to Pastor Jared so he could laugh because I am shorter, I had to take a lot more steps than everybody else. So, they'd be at, 17,000 steps, and I'd be at, 22,000 steps.
Really?
So I was I just want everybody to know that I'm working harder than everybody else on this trip. But so it was
That's the best.
Yeah. So,
that's the best.
For me, it was 8 to 10 miles every day, but, Wednesday, I was surprised that we got as many steps in on Wednesday as we did because Wednesday was our main training day at Dream Center. And so we sat a lot for that, but we still ended up with a lot of steps because we went out and did stuff that evening. an afternoon. But yeah, it was like 8 to 10 miles every day, basically. But
Yeah.
like twice as much as what I would typically do,
Now,
or more.
This is your first missions trip since you've been in the role, correct? Because everything was kind of shut down and things were put on pause.
Well, yeah,
I know
mean,
you
we
did
went
a
to
scouting.
Ecuador. Yeah, we went to Ecuador on the vision trip, but we didn't do, like, we had one day where we did some work there, but it was more like going and seeing everything for that. This was the first one that was like,
We take a
we did some
team.
work. Yeah.
We get loaded up. We
Yeah.
prep everybody, months in
Yeah.
advance. Here's the price.
Mm-hmm.
You got to do this. Here's some ideas to
Yes.
fundraise and
Yeah.
everything. And then, obviously leading up to the day of taking off. First off, just kind of set up a little bit like where this missions trip was,
Yeah.
and what the mission was for this trip. So
Yeah, so we have a partner, Dream Center New York City. You may have heard of Dream Centers. There's Dream Centers all throughout the country. But Dream Center New York City is who we were partnering with, and we always go and help set up their church and stuff, help them on Sundays at the Grace Place Church, which they're connected to. But one of the things that they do, like the main thing that they do, is what they call community markets. And that's where they go into the different communities. And it's basically like a food pantry, but taking it to them.
Yep.
Instead of having people try to travel, people who can't afford it, like don't have the money or the means or the even physicality to be able to do that. Because like the first place I think it was the first place, in Chelsea that we served at. There's like a whole full huge building for seniors, and some of them are on walkers or wheelchairs and that kind of thing. And so so you go to these different places. A lot of them are there, what they call NYCHA buildings. It's a New York City Housing Associate something. Yes, Housing Authority. So it's like, what somebody might call projects here or whatever, but we don't call them that. But it's housing based on, low income or like some of them are on sliding scale, that kind of thing. But you go to these places and
Section 8.
I don't know what that means for sure.
Yeah, that's like the legal term for it or whatever.
Gotcha. But so
just based on income.
Yeah, so in Chelsea there were 2 different locations, the Fulton and Chelsea Elliott. Like, so we split up teams. So there were 5 of us from here at Southridge, and then one from who's been on several of these trips in the past from Elk River, and then there was a team of 6 from Trinity Church of God in Huntington that we all went. So we kind of split like Trinity and then Southridge / Elk River. Like, so we just brought Mandy into our group. But we split for those days that we had 2 separate locations. We split up, and one team did one site and the other did the other site. And so you serve that community, but like, and there were 3 different days of that. Plus we helped set up their warehouse, kind of organize it and set it up for their packing party that they do. So they have different volunteer groups that will come in and do their packing party where they'll load up boxes for one of their sites, their main site that's like right there at their church. It's in front of a school in the Heights that we served in the last, Saturday. They put it in boxes because it's kind of a more attended and it's a little bit more chaotic, so it's easier to just have those packed up. So anyway, but one thing they did this year, they've started doing for these trips now since they've opened them back up, is training. And so that first day we really just we got to hear the stories of those who are on staff. And when I say on staff, it's like different than on staff here because they have to raise all their funds. They're basically like missionaries. And so their staff and their pastors, like, they just shared their stories and like how Dream Center came about and how all that came about. And we started with worship every day, which was really, really cool. It ended with devotions. And so there's an aspect that we talk about here on staff of like you're doing for God needs to come out of your being with God. Like, and I felt like there was that really good balance of that for this trip. But so we did that one day, and we had some training about just the culture and the things that we needed to be aware of. But then also the next day we did some evangelism training. And so we got to write down our stories and share the gospel, and kind of did some role playing where we had some different scenarios of people we might come in contact with, and different stories that we'd have, and just some role playing of how we would share with them, or get to a place where we could ask them if we could pray together with them, and that kind of thing. And so that in and of itself, because they're about training and equipping people to be able to go out and share the gospel wherever they are. And so not just while we're there in New York City, but like to be able to take those tools back with us to do that for wherever we live in. Which was, I think that was a really cool aspect of it. Of the Dream Center, because a lot of people, you go on to a mission trip, or you go somewhere and you don't think about those things, or you don't do that type of stuff ahead of time, or like maybe you're not used to meeting people on the street, because like at each community market you have somebody set up to be able to pray with the people. And so they just really kind of give you the tools and the ability to do that. And they also are really good about each day we did a prayer tour within the area that we were serving, so we could get to know more about the area, more about the people, the things that they're dealing with, the struggles that they have, the tensions that are going on, some of the needs that they have. And so I just feel like it was really cool, because we got to be really well equipped for what we were doing.
It's, I mean, talk about being set up for success. That's one of the things because my brother served on staff at Angelus Temple in Los Angeles, which is the church that founded the absolute first Dream Center. And he was on staff there for 12 years or so, maybe a little bit longer. And I remember talking with him whenever they were starting the New York Dream Center. And so they would fly him from Los Angeles to New York every Sunday for Sunday night service there to lead worship. And he did that for months and months and months, until they found somebody that would be in charge of that. But it was always just, for him, it was just so different, just because of like the different locations. Like Los Angeles is a completely different animal than New York. And New York,
Absolutely.
I mean, they're like polar opposites, but probably equal amount of crazy. But it is what it is. I mean, whenever you get millions and millions and millions of people, I mean, you're bound to have some fun stories.
Well, that's what it was like. It was kind of one of those things that I'm like, people are people everywhere.
For sure.
Like, you're going to have some of that, like, whatever, anywhere you go. But when you have more people, then obviously there's more chance of seeing something or doing something. But, like, honestly, what was cool is, like, we didn't see anything crazy until, like, the last hour that we were there.
Yeah, I think Jess told me about it.
But
I don't know if it's like podcast.
Yeah, that's okay. We'll see if we get there.
It was nutty, but
yeah,
maybe that's a mystery meat question.
But yeah, no, we just like, I don't know, like I didn't, like, there were some people that felt a little tense a couple times. And I had said, like, the one day I'd said I felt a little intense, because it was just like that second day of like hearing some of the needs and the tensions and the things there. It was just like, man, this is so much more, because there are more people. Like, the need is greater, or the struggles are great, like intensified because the amount. You know what I mean? Like,
it's different whenever you see 5 or 10 people going through something that's really tough or struggling. But whenever you go into these communities and there's hundreds of people and they're all going through the same thing.
But you're talking about thousands of people. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah, because like even just the housing areas that we were in. I mean, the one day we got there, and we had gotten there a little earlier before the truck got there, and we were just sitting, and I'm looking at these massive buildings that are like, 20 stories or more high, and so big. And I'm like, and Jess is saying how many thousands of people are probably living there. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Because I'm just thinking of like what I grew up close to in Huntington, like you're talking maybe 3 stories high, like,
Yeah.
and not near as big. And I'm just thinking, and whenever, so like in one of the places, Chelsea, that we were in, um, there's a lot of talk and discussion about um, whether to tear down those buildings and rebuild or fix them up. And there's a lot of tension, a lot of fear, because you're talking about a lot of people who would be displaced.
That's what I'm saying. Like
When that happened in
it's
Huntington,
either option. You're displacing
yeah,
people.
in Huntington, when that needed to happen, when they wanted to tear down, they were able to relocate almost everybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they had places that they were already rebuilding in. Like in New York, there's not tons of space to develop or rebuild or like whatever.
Yeah, you're landlocked. I mean, you
Yeah,
got rivers
and so just
all
like
over.
thinking about that just put a lot into perspective for me, where I was just sitting there thinking like, wow, all these people, like
Mm-hmm.
I can't even fathom it. Like it's just crazy to me to think about.
Yeah. Now, just to kind of get off topic, because I think it's something that we should mention. While you were there, y'all were in the middle of dealing with the Canadian wildfires.
Yeah.
And the before and after picture, it's crazy that what a couple hours can do. And y'all were dealing with the smoke and the soot and the ash and everything else in the air, to where it looked apocalyptic. Like
on Wednesday especially. Like, and we didn't even send like when it was at its worst, because when it was at its worst, we were inside training.
For sure.
But yeah, it was a little crazy. Like we sat there, we were sitting there in the Dream Center up in their loft area, looking out and seeing it just get darker. Like, and I'm not talking like dark as in gray, but like dark as in orange. Like it was wild to think about. Like I think it's from the Blade Runner movie, maybe, where there's a scene where it's like there were memes going out about it like that. Like, man, it was just wild. But sitting there, and like we had to put masks on to go around to the little bodega to get drinks and things for lunch, and just so we were gonna go somewhere and eat outside for lunch, and we were like, we're gonna have to eat inside, you know. And there was a lot of, because like Tuesday it seemed foggy, but like Tuesday evening it got worse, because Tuesday was a free day for us, and so like a lot of us, we'd gone out exploring. We took the ferry, you know, around to where we could get close to the Statue of Liberty and see it and all that, and like and it seemed a little like foggy to me, and I was just like, what is this? But then Tuesday evening, a few of us, we went to go see a Broadway show, and we came out from dinner, and we were like, is it about to storm? And then it was so like foggy still. I was like, oh no, this is from the wildfires. Like this is what it is. And so it was starting to get a little dark. And Tuesday morning, I mean, it was a little bit like that. Just seemed a little foggy. But then that afternoon, it was like we're sitting there and we just see it getting darker and darker. But then as it went, like it started lightening up. And we decided, we were like, you know what, we're going to go, because we really wanted to do the 9/11 museum on Wednesday, because we got done early on Wednesday. And we were like, you know what, we're going to be in the subway most of the time, and then just walking to the place, like we can still do it. We'll just wear masks. And so we did. Like, but even Tuesday evening, it started lightening up. And by Thursday, I mean, it was like,
it was clear again.
It was basically clear. And so there was a little moment where it was like, oh gosh, like, what's going to happen? Like, are we going to be able to do the things we're here for?
Yeah.
And then but Wednesday morning, I think it was. Yeah, Wednesday morning, literally, not knowing any of this was going on, Isaiah, who leads the short-term missions there, and he's also their creative director at their church that leads worship and stuff. He led a song, and oh my gosh, what's the name of the song? Basically, but it talks about like how even when I don't have enough, like God is enough, and I don't have to worry. And like the bridge is just like, I don't have to worry. You are enough, like, you know, whatever. And so it was just one of those God moments of like, God knew what was going to happen. And so we had that to start out our day, to keep us going throughout the rest of the day, to know like, you know what, like we don't need to worry, because God knew this was going to go on, and he knew we were coming on this trip. And so we just have to, like, it was that moment of like knowing we can trust God through this, like, and he's going to bring us through this, and it's okay. Like several of us like had some sinus, and like I still sound a little bit coffee or whatever because of it, but like not because of that. I sounded like I had some stuff going into it, but I feel like that first day, like we were all just coughing and whatever for a little bit because I don't remember what they said about like how it's like smoking like however many packs of cigarettes in a certain amount of time and whatever. And I was like, oh, wow, that's not cool.
Yeah.
But it's like we're not doing this continually. But we really just had to trust God. And then we were just so thankful when it did clear up. But like even still, I was sitting there and I was like, what we're dealing with here is nothing compared to what they're dealing with in Canada. So like, to me, it's like, you know what? Like, yeah, this is kind of freaky or whatever, but like, it's nothing compared to that. So it was like, it's okay. Like, we're okay. We can get through a little bit of coughing or a little bit of whatever. Because I know, like, I remember somebody like was like, I blew my nose and it was all like black coming out, and I'm like, yeah. But it's just things that you don't think about like that. But I feel like that Wednesday morning, starting with that song and that worship moment, like that's what got us through it. We kept coming back to that, and like, how cool is it that God had put it on his heart to start with that song?
Yeah.
Like for that day when it was the craziest,
Yeah. Now, for you personally, how has engaging in mission work impacted your personal growth and then also your walk with the Lord?
Yeah. So for me personally, it's kind of a little bit of a longer story. So when I was a teenager, I had felt called into ministry and into missions, but I hadn't told anybody. Like I hadn't told a soul. But the church that I went to, it was a Baptist church, so they didn't really affirm females in ministry. So I had just thought like, well, I'll go and become a pediatrician and like get to work with kids, and I'll do missions that way, like, and I can work it in there,
Yeah.
And so anyway, that year at summer camp, my youth mentor prayed over me. And she didn't even remember saying it. Like, I was crying afterwards, and I told her what she said. I was like, do you know what you said? Like, do you realize what you said? But she prayed over me, and she had prayed, that she could see me on the mission field, and I wasn't afraid, and I was sharing the gospel and things like that. And it was just like one of those moments where it was like, okay, God, you just confirmed this for me because I hadn't told a soul, you know what I mean? And it was like through her prayer, she was just reminding me and letting me know that God saw that, and it was going to happen. But I mean, fast forward, there was a lot of things that happened in my life between that moment and, starting ministry work. And so when I came on staff here in 2013, I remember like telling the pastor when he interviewed me, like, hey, like I do feel called to missions too. And he told me, well, that's good to know, because like we're planning on taking a mission trip to like Nicaragua and whatever. And I'm like, okay, cool. So like that first year and a half of ministry, like not in that year, but the following year, I went to Nicaragua, and then a couple months later, turned around and went to Honduras. And
I've been to Honduras. It's beautiful there.
It is. We worked in Honduras specifically. We worked with an organization that helps girls who have come out of sex trafficking and abusive homes and things like that. So something really close to my heart. But that was wonderful, but then I started having babies, and I haven't done anything in years, until last year when we went to Ecuador, and I know that like after going to Ecuador, like my husband, he has a heart for missions as well, but he hasn't gotten to go on those trips, like, and he's been the one home with the kids.
Yeah, it's hard to find somebody to watch your kids for 8, 9, 10 days if you go on like these over.
And speaking of, like, we still don't know who's watching our kids in November, but it's gonna work out. It's gonna happen. We're okay with it. We know it's going to.
Jenny Lawrence.
Yeah, maybe. Man, she's just gonna have to drive the church van always with her 4 and my 3. But
yeah.
But yeah. So like, one thing that I shared at the end of our trip, when we kind of did a debrief of this trip, was that, going on, the decision to go on this trip was hard for me because I had always said, like, I have no desire to go to New York City. Like, I don't like big cities. I'm fine with, like, I've been in a small town all my life. Like, Charleston's the biggest town I've lived in. Like, and I don't even live in the town now. I live out 15 minutes past Charleston. So, like, I'm not used to that kind of thing, and I didn't want to do that thing necessarily, but, like, I don't think I realized that we're not going to be in Times Square the whole, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's what in my head, it was like, oh my gosh, we're going to be in Times Square like constantly. And I don't like that. I don't want to be in that.
Yeah,
like,
you're not in the tourist sections.
but that's not at all what we did. But but I knew that I needed to go on this trip. One, because of my role. And if I'm going to continue to, push trips for this and whatever, I needed to go for myself and see. But it was also hard because I knew that I was going to have to leave my husband with my kids again. And he had said after the last one to Ecuador, he was like, "You're not going on another trip until I get to go, whether I go with you or not." Like, you know, and
you're like, "This is my job, though."
I know it is my job, but I also have,
I'm teasing.
I also have that role for my family. And so like, it was one of those that I didn't take, like, it was not a light decision to go on this trip at all. And I had a lot of like feelings leaving because of that, like of like the guilt or the thoughts of like, well, I know I'm supposed to go, but it's a struggle for my husband right now because he doesn't, he didn't hear that or feel the things that I have personally. And so it was that Saturday, he sent me a series of messages and he was like, "This has been the hardest week, but I've absolutely enjoyed myself." He said, "Don't get me wrong, I'm going to be happy when you come home, but I think I needed this too." And I'll get emotional. But like in that moment, it was like, okay, God, like, even though it might have taken till the last day of that trip for him to see and realize, like, this is good. I did need this. Like, she is where she's supposed to be, and I am where I'm supposed to be in this moment. It was that moment of like remembering to be confident in what God's calling me to do.
Yeah.
As hard as it may seem at times, that even if those closest to you don't get it or understand it or have some tension around it in that moment, to trust and be confident that if God's calling me to it, eventually they'll come around. Mm-hmm. And so those texts were like just an answered prayer for me of like knowing and being confident. And like every trip that I've taken, I feel like I just grow a little bit more confident in what God has called me to, and knowing that I am doing the right thing, that I am on the right path, that I that I can trust him in all of that. Like, and so that growth, I think that happens personally in whatever area of your faith needs grown. I feel like that's what happens for everybody. And so even like our team, Isaiah had told us, he said, "Hey, I want you guys to come up with like a word or something that like represents your group for this trip, like what you feel like." Because every day he kind of had us give like a word of like what we were feeling about the day, about the trip, at the beginning and often at the end too. Like, okay, how do you feel now if you were to sum it up in one word? And so at the end, like,
anybody say tired?
Oh yeah, yeah, someone did. But we were like, obedience or like trust or like whatever. And then I was like, what about grow? Because like I feel like each of us have grown. Like there was one of the families from Trinity that came, a husband and wife and their two sons who are 13 and 11. And like the husband, like he grew up Catholic. So like praying out loud for any of those boys, the husband or the sons, was just not something for them. But like seeing them step out in it and grow in it was beautiful to see. And so like we had just chose like grow was our word, like that we all felt like we had grown in some area or another throughout the trip. And so I think like for me personally and for everyone, there's an area of growth that just happens on a trip that doesn't happen in your everyday walk. It's easy in your everyday walk, I think, to stay comfortable in your areas, like, and not step out in those things to grow. But like on a mission trip, you're kind of forced into it. Like,
yeah. We kind of talked a little bit about this, like the cultural differences from like, from, being in West Virginia and then obviously going to New York. And this happens a lot, especially whenever you go overseas or to South America. But what role does cultural sensitivity and understanding play in successful missional work? And how do we navigate cultural differences whenever we are put in these situations? Because so many times we can just be, we think that, like the way that I do things
Yeah.
is the way that everybody does things, and
Yeah.
that is just not the case.
Right. Yeah. I think first off, understanding it, knowing about it, it just helps you minister better. Because if you don't know or understand what their struggles are, like you can't help them in the way they need it. And I think one of the things that Isaiah said on his first trip. So like what was really cool about this trip is seeing the connection and the relationships between Pastor Jess and like Isaiah and some of the others who were on staff there, because Pastor Jess has been going to New York City for a very long time. And even like with this trip, I was like, hey, I'll go, but I don't want to lead it because I didn't know what I was doing,
Yeah.
But seeing that, but so Isaiah on like his first trip there, like he said at one of the community markets, someone was like, what are you guys doing here? And he was like, oh, well, we're here to help you guys. Like, and he was like, we don't need your help. Like, you know what I mean? And he like, and just even like hearing that and realizing like the way that you phrase things, like, because yes, they're thankful and appreciative of it, but like he talked about not having that savior complex. So coming in and like, hey, we're here to do like good work. And like, we're going to make their life better because we're here. And that kind of thing is like not the right attitude to have. So like for New York specifically, I think there's a lot of stereotypes around New York of like that they're rude, that they're like whatever. And, I think I had one moment where someone was kind of like, whatever. But it was just because like I ended up touching her and she did not want to be touched. And I get that, and that's okay. But it didn't really bother me that much. But like just knowing like they're really good about telling you ahead of time, for instance, like, hey, other people are trying to get to work, they're trying to do their things, like, and if you aren't following the right way to do things, you could potentially make them miss their subway, their train, get late to work, and all of these things, to where like they could potentially lose their job. Like, we have to remember that their life's still going on. So like, just things of like letting people off the train before you get on, like staying over to the side so that way people can pass you, like instead of huddling in a group. Like they talked about, either single file, like not walking more than 2 people deep,
or side by side.
so that way people can get around you to get where they're going, and that like, they're not necessarily just like busy, rude people, but they have places to go, and even navigating the trains, the subways, and realizing like how much like, oh, you missed that train, like you got to wait another 12 minutes. And so it could put us behind for what we're going to do. Like realizing that like the commute aspect for New York was huge for us. Just to realize, oh, like they're not, like they had us, we had orientation, at the place that we stayed, where they kind of showed us some videos to talk about those things and to make us realize that stuff, which again just helps set us up for success in what we are doing. To where they talked about like not wearing an I love New York shirt, because it's just like the stamp to show you're a tourist, you're whatever. But like, again, though, if you're traveling in a group of like 11 people, then you kind of stand out too. But I think just being able to know what's going on so you can minister in the right way, and get rid of your assumptions and your stereotypes and your whatever. I know I said we did like a prayer tour each day, but Harlem was probably the one that I felt the most emotion towards, because it's a very large African American and Latino population that lives there, and like that's where the Apollo Theater is, where a lot of our black artists have done stuff there and like seen their squares, and like part of the gentrification that's trying to take, like that they're trying to do within Harlem, can often push out that culture, jobs, businesses, like whatever. And in the end, like it might look on the surface as like it's gonna better that community, but when you get below it and see like what it's doing to the people who are currently there, like that's what's hard. To see and realize like, oh, like, because I think it would be really easy to be like, oh yeah, they're gonna come in and build this building that's gonna create all these jobs, but not realizing that building is gonna demolish all these other buildings, or like take away these other like African American business owners and jobs and like whatever of the people who are currently there. And so like it's this tension that is there that's very real of knowing like um, that culture is important, and keeping it in a way like is important as well. Um, and knowing like, so for instance, like going to Ecuador, knowing that there is one of their biggest struggles is like polygamy, like that's one of their biggest things, and knowing like how to minister. So like when you go in as someone who is a married person, like knowing that like you may run into multiple people who have multiple families, and knowing and being able to minister to them in the right way. Like in Ecuador, they're very much like open to the gospel because they're rooted in like Catholic tradition, but they don't necessarily practice it anymore. But they still have a lot of respect for that. In New York, you have, I think they said like 5% is Christian, like
it's crazy.
would identify as Christian. And so like it's a huge difference to like go in and see that there are a lot of people who are not open to that. A lot of people who are, I mean, there's a lot of Catholic too there, which was cool because I like at one of the sites I had a conversation that kind of went kind of long, and I didn't want to force it, but I think that I helped her think, because she shared with me how she grew up Catholic and had done her confirmation and like gone through the classes and those kind of things. And it reminded me a lot of my aunt, like, because I said, well, do you have a personal relationship with Jesus? And that's when she said, well, yeah, I mean, I did the class and the confirmation, and I was like, do you pray to God yourself? Like, do you know that you can do that? And she's like, I mean, yeah, I guess I can at night. And I was like, no, you can anytime. Like, and it just reminded me of my aunt who, like a lot of my family's Catholic. And so, like, I remember getting in conversation with my aunt when I was a teen, where she tried to give me a necklace that had, like, a saint, or maybe it had the Mother Mary on there or whatever. And, like, she talked about how we pray to that person, and whatever. And I was like, why do I need to go through anybody else when I can go directly to God? Like, and just sharing that, like, and my aunt now is like much more open to that aspect. Like she, she has a lender that she goes to that's also a pastor that she allows to pray for her multiple times. But like just having that conversation, knowing like that background of like Catholic and like what some of their beliefs are, the way that they do things, to be able to have that conversation with her, to kind of remind her and let her know, like, hey, you don't have to go to a priest. You don't have to go whatever. It's not like a specific thing that you have. You can do it anytime. You yourself can do this and can pray anytime. Like, had I not known that background, I wouldn't have been able to have that conversation with her in that way. And so it just, again, it really just helps you to be able to minister and share the gospel in a way that they might be open to receive it. Like, if you don't know about someone, if you haven't created some kind of relationship or know a little bit about them, then it's hard to approach the gospel with them in a way that they would be open, and understanding to receive it.
Yeah. Your next trip that y'all are taking is in November to go in, and y'all are going to Ecuador. How many people from the church are signed up?
I believe we have 10 as of right now.
That's exciting.
Yeah, so we're going to go to our Hope Zone of Las Chakras and build a playground. And we are still trying to raise the funds for that playground, but several of us, like, we've got a link that you can donate for that playground, but it talks about the benefits of play, because in Ecuador specifically, like, they're really big into soccer. So, like, you'll go through a place that seems like kind of impoverished, but like, but there's this really nice soccer pitch there. However, like, the kids don't really have access to it. It's the adults, like the males, like the men, when they get off work, they're going there and they're playing soccer and they're drinking and whatever, but there's not a lot of safe places for kids. Like, many of them don't have a safe place to go.
No, it's just a dirt
and play.
field.
They don't have, and I mean, the benefits, like, physically and developmentally for kids with play, like, it helps them with their imagination. It helps them with, like, just developing their body and their muscles and those kind of things.
Yeah.
So like when we went before, we got to go to one of the little villages and eat in the homes with people and just hear how the playground and the food and the kids clubs and stuff have impacted their lives. And I'll never forget like the home that we were in. It was the grandmother of this little boy, and she talked about how rebellious he was, and how almost like lazy him and his siblings were. Like they didn't have muscle, and they didn't have energy most of the time to even go play if they did have something. Like, but they were just mean and hateful. Like this one family, like her daughter has struggled with cancer, and so that's part of it. But then after the kids club started and the playground was built, how much that has shifted. Like that now he is happy and joyful and kind and wants to help and has energy to help, and they're have so much more energy and have built muscles and like
Yeah, it's not just like a okay, here's like
Right.
energy drain
Yeah.
for your community.
Right.
Like just let's take our kids to the park like what we do.
Yeah.
What it does is it gives something. It's like, okay, I know I had a terrible
Mm-hmm.
day today, but I've got something to look forward to
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow. And it like as simple as a playground, it offers hope.
Mm-hmm.
It offers those things
Yeah.
to where like developmental, like you
Yeah.
said, like physically, also socially as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but there's so much more that goes into
Yeah.
whenever you can interject something as simple as a
Yeah.
playground
And
in these hope zones
yeah.
and
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 what's
see what happens
yeah.
like generationally because
Yes.
of this.
And what's really cool is that like we don't just go as our team into this city, into this village and build it ourselves. People from the community come and build alongside of us.
Yeah.
And they do that purposefully so that way those people in the community have ownership over it as well.
It gives them a sense of pride
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
Like gosh, like can you imagine just like okay, like I helped build this like
Yeah.
and then the kids see their parents work on it or whatever
Yes.
and they're going to take
Yeah.
super good care of it cuz they're going to don't do that,
Yeah.
that's going to break it. And so like it
Yeah.
gives them a sense of ownership and
Well,
accomplishment and
yeah.
and like I said,
And like
hope
there's one
it
boy,
provides hope
yeah,
because of it.
the one boy in the community, they call him the king of the playground because he like has so much ownership of it that like he'll go and he'll clean up the trash. Like so even if like men are out there like doing whatever, like he'll get the other kids in the community to go and help clean up all the trash beforehand, and he watches them, and if they
That's
try to bring
awesome.
trash, he's like, "No, you go throw that away." Like
Yeah.
it's so cool to see like that he takes so much ownership of it, like to make sure that it's clean and stays in good shape for
Yeah.
them. And so, yeah, it does. It's something that's just like, I don't know. That was one of my favorite stories from that community
Yeah.
too, of
That's
seeing
awesome.
it. And so like, I
How
can't
how
wait.
could people like if they want to partner with this to help provide some financial assistance for us to be
Mhm.
able to bring this playground into Ecuador? How can people find that out?
So
I know
if
that we're
you want to
doing a
go,
giving campaign in service, but if
yeah,
you don't attend here
yeah. So
and
you
you
can go
listen,
to src.life/Las Chakras. It's LASCHACRAS.
yep.
If you go there, there are links for all those different things. Even if you're like, wow, that's a really cool thing that they're going on a mission trip. I can't go on the trip, but I want to help support somebody who is going on the trip. Like there's a link where you can give towards that as well.
Yeah.
But you can find all those things, including the playground. That's probably the easiest place to go. And actually, if you just go to src.life, I think one of the main cards that's on there right now is the Lost Chakras one. So you just look for that card and click on it, and you'll see all those things, and you'll be able to find some more information about that. You can also, like, if you want to learn more about the Dream Center, like there's a card on there as well. If you go to just our missions and outreach card,
Yeah.
you can find all our different partners as well. Because I think the Dream Center is one that it's a little bit lower cost. So now that they've opened back up to have short-term missions there, I think the plan is to be able to at least go once a year again.
For sure.
But and it's one that's really great for teens. Like I said, we had a 13-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 16-year-old
Yeah.
on the trip. And like, man, I don't know. There were multiple times that we were just like, Joel, the 16-year-old, we're just like crying because just hearing him pray and hearing him like the way that, like, during the evangelism training, just seeing the way that he did things and whatever, just the comfort level. Like, it's just so cool to see that kind of thing. But so it's a great trip for teens as well. But you can check those things out and and be on the lookout for when our next trips are happening. And that kind of stuff. So src.life, really a place to go.
Awesome. All righty. I mean, we've been talking about having you on the stinking potluck for weeks. And so I was like, I'm going to fill this sucker up. So we've got better questions.
Did you use the AI to help come up with questions at all?
I didn't.
Yeah. What is it? Chat GPT or whatever?
I did not. All right.
You can do that.
Ooh, this is a good one. If you could use magic to do one mundane task for the rest of your life, what would it be? And also a bonus question, a bonus mystery meat. What would you name the spell?
Laundry. That's the first thing that came to my mind. Is that a mundane task enough?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's mundane. It's monotonous for sure.
Laundry, and I'd call it.
Got to think of something clever. I think while you think about that, I think mine would be laundry as well. And I don't know that I could come up with a clever name.
Like
I'm sure I could if I what's that?
I said wash and fold.
Wash and fold. I don't know.
I feel like you have to add like random goofy syllables at the end, like washable, foldable. I don't know. Sorry.
What?
Yep. See, I'm still tired.
Dude, what? What was that?
That
you
was
couldn't
something.
come up with like something clever with like the laundry soap, like Tidamus Bounteous or something. But you just said washable, closable.
I like yours. What was that? Tidable. What'd you say?
I just put Tide, Tide and Bounty, because Bounty. We use the Bounty.
I got that part. I couldn't.
Tide.
What was the ending?
I don't know. It just came to mind. It's stupid. We can't even. Magic doesn't even exist. Like, this is why this jar exists, is so I can ask dumb questions like this.
You know, magic doesn't exist. Listen, we went and I saw Wicked. That's the Broadway show I went and saw. It was really good.
I wish you would have told me. I knew somebody that's in that.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
Well, we went and saw it. I didn't know what the storyline was. I had to ask Jess, but I knew some of the songs because my senior year I took choir. My senior year is one of my electives, and we sang a couple of the songs. Like, we sang Popular, and I think we sang the one at the end, like Changed for the Better. I don't know if
they're
that's
making
the
a
title,
movie.
But are they?
Yeah.
Listen,
I think Ariana Grande's in it. Did you hear that, Jess? No? Never mind. All right. Well, we appreciate you.
Let us know what your magic name title thing would be. Anyway.
Just add bull at the end of it. Anyways, y'all have a great weekend. We'll see you next Friday for another episode of The Potluck. Be safe. Thank you so much for listening in with us today. We really appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram. And you can also watch the video version of this on YouTube as well. All you have to do is search up the Pastor's Potluck Podcast. From all of us here, we want to say thank you, and we'll see you next week.